Beneath a metro station in Athens, behind a glass wall, there is a skeleton of a woman who has been lying in her grave for 2,300 years. Every day, 1 million commuters walk past her on their way to work. She was found when they tried to build the station above her. So was a river that has been flowing underground since before recorded history. So were 1,200 graves, including the mass burial pit of the Athenian plague dead from 430 BCE. So was the oldest bridge ever discovered in Greece. So was a dog buried in a carefully built tomb with a collar around its neck and 2 perfume flasks placed beside its body by someone who loved it. They found all of this because Athens needed a metro for the 2004 Olympics. 2 new lines were planned, cutting through the historic center, passing beneath the Acropolis, the ancient agora, and some of the most densely layered archaeological ground on the planet. The tunnel boring machines would operate at a depth of 20 meters, safely below the ancient city. The tunnels themselves passed through clean geological layers that had never been touched by human hands. The tunnels were fine. The stations were the problem. A metro system needs more than tunnels. It needs stations, ventilation shafts, escalator wells, and access corridors, all of which must be dug from the surface downward. In a city built on 3,000 years of continuous habitation, digging from the surface means cutting through every century that came before. And in Athens, those centuries are stacked directly on top of each other, compressed into layers as shallow as half a meter to as deep as 7 meters below the modern street. The moment the excavators broke ground for the first station, they hit archaeology. Not fragments, not scattered pottery, entire sections of the ancient city, roads, houses, workshops, cemeteries, water systems, religious sanctuaries, and the buried beds of rivers that had been paved over and forgotten centuries ago. Over 50 archaeologists were assigned to the project. Several hundred laborers joined them. Construction was halted every time a new discovery was made, and in Athens, discoveries were made constantly. The spokesman for the Metro Authority described the situation bluntly. The power of the archaeologist was very heavy. The Ministry of Culture had an eye on everything. The archaeological digs doubled and sometimes even tripled the delays. By the time the excavations were complete, more than 50,000 artifacts had been pulled from the ground across more than 20 excavation sites along the 2 new lines. Vases, amphorae, oil lamps, coins, bronze pieces, gold coins from the Byzantine Emperor Justinian II, ceramic coffins, marble sculptures, mosaic floors, wall paintings, funerary monuments, toys, perfume flasks, weaving looms, and the bones of humans and animals spanning 25 centuries. But the most extraordinary decision was not what they found. It was what they did with it. Instead of extracting the ruins and continuing construction as planned, the Metro Authority and the Ministry of Culture agreed to redesign the stations themselves around the archaeology. The ruins would not be removed. They would be preserved in place and made visible to the public. The metro stations would become museums. At Sintagma Station, in the heart of modern Athens, the excavation uncovered evidence of habitation from the 5th century BCE through the Ottoman period. An entire stratigraphic cross-section of the city was cut into the earth, layer by layer, century by century. Instead of filling it in, the engineers built a glass wall around it. Today, passengers descending to the platform pass a full-height display showing the archaeological section of Athens' roads, walls, clay pipes from the ancient water supply system, and a tomb containing the skeleton of a young woman who lived in the 4th century BCE. She lies in her grave between layers of soil, visible to every commuter who walks past. Among the coins recovered from the Sintagma excavation were gold dinakes, pseudo-coins placed in graves during the Hellenistic period. They were not real currency. They were fair money for the dead, payment to Charon, the ferryman who carried souls across the river Styx to the underworld. The passengers waiting for a metro train at Sintagma Station today are standing above a cemetery where the dead were buried, with their own transit fare, 23 centuries before the metro existed. At the Acropolis station, the main stop for visitors to the Parthenon, An area of 2,500 square meters was excavated, revealing evidence of human activity from the 3rd millennium BCE through Byzantine times. Graves from the Middle Helladic and Late Helladic periods, houses, workshops, roads, and baths. A large display case shows artifacts recovered from the dig. Replicas of the Parthenon frieze line the platform walls. A model of a vertical Greek loom and fragments of pottery, including an Athenian amphora given as a prize to one of the winners of the Panathenaic Games, are displayed in cases near the exit. At the Monastiraki station, the excavation uncovered something nobody had expected. The buried riverbed of the Eridanos, one of the 3 ancient rivers of Attica, had its source on the slopes of Mount Lycabettus and once flowed through the center of the city. In the 4th century BCE, the river was bounded by large blocks of stone. During the reign of the Emperor Hadrian, in the 2nd century CE, it was vaulted with brick, covered over, and turned into a sewer. It had been buried for nearly 2,000 years. The metro builders uncovered the vaulted ceiling over the river and found, to their astonishment, that the Eridanos was still flowing. Water from the ancient river still moves through the channel beneath the modern city, running through the same brick vault that the Romans built over it 19 centuries ago. Instead of diverting the water and sealing the vault, the architects opened a 300 square meter section of the excavation to the public. Today, passengers stepping off the train at Monastiraki can walk onto a glass bridge and look down into the ancient riverbed. Natural light fills the space. The sound of flowing water is audible. Birds flutter in and rest on the exposed ruins of buildings dating from the 8th century BCE to the 19th century. It is an active archaeological site inside an active metro station. At the Kerameikos station, the excavation cut through one of the most significant cemeteries of the ancient city. 1,200 graves were examined, dating from the 7th century, before the Common Era, to the Roman period. The cemetery had been in use for over 1,000 years, its boundaries expanding and contracting with the city walls. The graves ranged from simple pit burials to elaborate stone-built tombs, reflecting every social class and every century of Athenian life. 2 mass burial pits from the beginning of the Peloponnesian War were discovered, containing the remains of at least 150 men, women, and children thrown into a pit without ceremony or care. They dated from 430 to 420 BCE, the years when the Great Plague struck Athens, killing roughly a quarter of the population, including Pericles himself. The historian Thucydides, who survived the plague, described how the dying were stacked in temples, how the dead were thrown onto funeral pyres that were already burning for someone else, how all custom and law collapsed under the weight of so many bodies. The excavators at Kerameikos had found the physical evidence of what Thucydides described 24 centuries after they were buried. If most of the hundreds of graves uncovered in the metro digs were neat and orderly, some were deeply unsettling. Among them were large ceramic pots, amphorae, and storage jars in which small children had been buried. This was a common practice in the ancient Greek world for infants and very young children, but encountering it in the ground beneath a modern street was something the excavation teams did not forget. Among the graves at Kerameikos was one that stopped the excavation team entirely. A carefully constructed tomb with terracotta walls and a tile floor, built with obvious care and attention, contained the skeleton of a dog. The animal had been laid on its left side. A collar studded with embellished copper discs was fastened around its neck. 2 perfume flasks had been placed on the floor beside it. Someone in ancient Athens had loved this dog enough to build it a proper grave and send it off with offerings. Archaeologists describe the find as one of the most touching discoveries of the entire project. At the Agaleo station, the excavation crossed the Sacred Way, the ancient road that ran from the Sacred Gate in the Kerameikos district to the sanctuary of Demeter and Kore at Eleusis. This was the route of the Eleusinian Mysteries, the most important religious ceremony in the ancient Greek world, a secretive annual procession that drew participants from across the Mediterranean for over 1,000 years. A section of the Sacred Way was exposed near the station entrance, along with a roadside cemetery containing stone sarcophagi. Inside the station, the largest display of archaeological artifacts in the entire metro network covers two sections, one focused on cemeteries and the other on the industrial activities that took place along the route, including olive oil production, pottery making, metallurgy, and weaving. At Evangelismos Station, the excavation uncovered an ancient cemetery with 35 burials, a section of a 6th century water supply system, and a pottery workshop that had been in operation from the 2nd century before the Common Era until at least the 1st century of the Common Era. Along the station wall, a portion of the stratigraphic section is displayed, alongside the skeleton of a young woman who lived more than 2,300 years ago. At Daphne Station, the remains of an ancient agricultural settlement were uncovered, including houses, wells, retaining walls, and a garden. At Eleonis Station, workers found 3 limestone pillars of an ancient bridge that once crossed the Kifissos River, dating to the 5th or 6th century before the Common Era. It is the oldest bridge ever found in all of Greece. The metro builders hit archaeology at virtually every station along the route. In the tunnels between stations, the boring machines punched through ancient wells that had been filled with Byzantine pottery, intact and broken, which tumbled out onto the tunnel floor when the wall was breached. One photograph, reproduced life-size in the Monastiraki station, shows the moment the tunnel wall gave way and centuries of sealed pottery cascaded out. It is the image that best captures the entire project, a machine built to move through the earth, crashing into the things the earth had been holding. And then, in keeping with every other metro project on this channel, the builders left something behind. Somewhere between Sintagma and Monastiraki stations, a tunnel-boring machine that was too large and too costly to dismantle was abandoned in the ground. It is still there, sealed in the earth beneath the center of Athens, alongside the pottery, the graves, the riverbed, the Sacred Way, and the bones of the plague dead. The Athens Metro opened for the 2004 Olympics. It now carries over 1 million passengers a day through stations that double as museums, past glass walls displaying 25 centuries of continuous civilization, over rivers that have been flowing since before recorded history, and through tunnels that were carved by a machine that will never be recovered. The stations were designed to move people through the city. What they became was something else entirely. A cross-section of Athens cut 7 meters deep, preserved behind glass and open to anyone with a metro ticket. 50,000 artifacts, 1,200 graves, a river that still flows, a dog buried with perfume, and the oldest bridge in Greece, found beneath a metro platform. The city above keeps moving. The city below keeps waiting. And every day, 1 million people pass between them without realizing they are walking through both at the same time. Thanks for watching. If this is the kind of exploration you want to follow, subscribe. There is more to come.